I'm loving that.
No one knows what it's like
That sounds so
to
good.
be the bad man.
What?
To be the sad man behind blue eyes.
Good morning, everybody. How's it going? James here from Audio.etc. Final day working on the XKR Jag. Not much to do today. Hopefully I can get it done all nice and quick. I just have to carpet the front of the subwoofer enclosure, put it in there and do my final tune. That's all I have to do today, which is good. I don't like having my Fridays loaded up too heavy. But so I've got my little carpeting station down there ready to go, got my glue and everything, got the carpet cut out. I found some carpet which is pretty well similar to the trunk lining. We had three. We had like some thin sort of trunk lining black, some thin trunk lining charcoaly grey, and then I had some slightly thicker trunk lining black, which is much more similar to this one. The carpet in the back of this car is quite fluffy, if you know what I mean. So I went for the thicker, fluffier carpet, and this is more like a charcoal dark grey colour, and the one I'm putting in is black, but I think it'll look good enough. And so what I'm doing for securing the subwoofer box in, I tried to think of different ways to secure it in there, with like screws or bolts or something like that, but in the end I just decided to put some great big Velcro strips on it. So this is the back of it, which is going to stick to that back wall there, and then some on the side, because there's a little section of sidewall there. And then this will just sort of go in. The plastic will be there to help me get it in place, and then you pull the plastic out from in between them while it's pushed up, and the Velcro all grabs. Because otherwise it can be hard getting it in with the Velcro on it, because it like grabs as it's trying to go in. So hopefully the plastic will just help me in that respect. And yeah, all ready to do my carpeting. So I might as well get that done first, and that way at least it's drying while I'm putting the box in the hole. And then after I've got all that in and done, I can do the final tune on it. Okay, I got the panel carpeted. As you can see, that rabbit worked really well. It's got a nice clean edge to it. Corners look good. And I masked all of it off with paper, because I didn't want any, ugly glue overspray getting on my nice finished back and gasket. Of course not. No. Cut out the hole, and I also, as you can see, have put all of the mounting screws plus washers on there. I was originally going to use the self-tapping wood screws, but I've just had bad experience with them plus carpet in the past, so this time around I'm using washers and mushroom head screws. Also, I pre-drilled all these holes out to 4mm, so they're extra wide in there, which means that even though these are gripping now, when I tighten them up, they won't have any grab on this panel, which means that they'll squeeze the gasket up and thread into that and sandwich it all together nice and tight. Whereas if you have it threaded into this as well, that kind of limits your ability to squeeze this as tight as you can to that. So I think we are about ready to try and put this thing in place to begin with. So let's try to do that. The fun part is definitely going to be getting these screw holes to line up with the correct holes on there. It'll be fun. Alright, okay. Goes up this way. first things first, let's connect the wire to the connector. That side there is positive. There we go, there's negative and positive. So that's nice and tight. Okay, so now I need to get this plasticky stuff up in the right way, semi on top of it sort of thing. Zip wire doesn't get sat on it, comes out the side here. And then we sort of push this all the way back in as far as we can, like that. And pull out. Okay. And then we just push it all the way back in. I can't tell if it is all the way in or not. It's kind of hard. I think it is. It's as far back as it can go anyway. And yes, it rocks when it's like this, but once the baffle goes on and screws into this, it holds this in place. The baffle locks in behind here and pushes up against this bar here nice and tight. So it's going to be a nice firm fit. So that, so now the baffle. Okay. So we stick this piece behind here. Push this back. There we go. And now we've got to get everything lined up. Need to use like a hole that I can see as a beginning point, I think. I believe this one here is lined up with the right hole. Or if I just tighten this up, it should squeeze it up. Yep, see it squeezing it up. There we go. And now, I wonder if I'm going to be able to see any others that line up. If I could get one that's at the top lined up, that'd be great. I suppose what I need to do is just, I suppose I could just go for it really, can't I? Push that right up. There we go, that's closing the gap. I'm just gonna have to swap out my bit for a shorter one for those. Okay, I believe that's all of them. There we go. And I highly doubt that's going anywhere. Seal feels good. Cool. Let's get the subwoofer. Negative is over this side. Positive. There we go. And it's moving. Oh, here bass. There we go. Done. That's good, it's working, it's sounding good. I just need to give the trunk a decent vacuum and then I'll be doing the final tune on the system. Just to remind everyone how you get to the fuse for these amps in case you didn't see my other video. That panel simply lifts up and out. And then this panel here, which sits like that, next to the spare tyre, you just grab here, lift this out, and then my fuse holder is just there, 150 amp fuse. And then this just goes back in like that, sits down. And this panel goes this way around. Shove it in the back there. And then just make sure it's all the way in the back. And then you just sort of pop it down. Done. Looking good. I don't know why, but it's showing up real bright on the camera. It's not that bright in here. It's actually quite dark. Must be my camera's auto light adjusting. See if I look over here, real bright. It actually looks more like this. Yeah, it's just the camera adjusting. But yeah, no, that's looking real tidy. I'm loving that. Just need to give this a wipe. Bit of CRC 808. This stuff is great for everything in the workshop. It's good for lube, getting wires through tight spaces, but also it makes everything shiny and look beautiful. Anything plastic or metal looks brilliant with this. Like, Just a dusting. Like that. And then there we go. Now it looks like a new sub. I do need to, I think, just get like a Q-tip or something and clean in here, because these screw holes in the rubber here have a bit of dust, so I just need to clean in there somehow. There we go, looking way nicer. Sub looks nice and new and shiny. No dirt in the screw holes. Dust looks really good. Very happy. The next step is to do the final tuning on the amps and put these little covers back on. But before I do put those on, I do need to make sure I've done my final tuning. So, real things that I need to set now are the gains. To set the gains, okay, so someone was asking me, how do you set the gains on these amps? So, if I had SMD tools, I would use those. If I had the DD1, I would use that just as a rule. Maximum setting and tool clipping, that's what I would set it up as. Unfortunately, I don't have those fancy tools to do that. So there is a number of ways, number of amateur ways that, like, you know, way I can do it or you guys can do it. And there are, you know, rights and wrongs to every method, and it's a heavily discussed topic. So I'm sure there'll be people who agree with me and there'll be people who disagree with me. And there are a few ways you can do it, and I'll try and list some of the techniques you can use. First way you could probably do it, the way Grant taught me, is you play some music on your radio and you set the volume to 1, and then you keep turning the gains down until you straight up can't hear it coming out of the speakers. And that way there is, and what that does is it avoids a pop when you go from 0 to 1. Sometimes if you have your gains up a bit too high, you'll notice from 0 to 1, that's what you'll hear, like a, like you'll notice it kind of cutting in and out. But what you want is a real smooth transition from mute or no noise into volume. So that's one way you can do it. The other way you can do it is choose a sort of maximum volume you want to be able to be going up to. And it's important to remember almost all head units will have a clipping point or a distortion point. I think on these Alpines it's at around about, I think these go to 35, so, and I think these clip at about 30. These Alpine ones do, yeah. So what you could do then is set your head unit to your maximum volume that you want to be listening to it at, and then tune the gains up until you're happy with a maximum volume coming out of your amplifier. And that way is a wee bit more risky because you don't know, as opposed to kind of protecting it at the bottom end, you're aiming for your top end and people can get greedy with volume. So that is one way you can do it. The other way you could do it, is by looking at the dials on the amplifier. Some amplifiers will have, next to their gains, they'll have little marks telling you what voltage that is designed for. So I have a head unit here which has 4 volt pre-outs. So if there's a mark on that amplifier that says 4 volts, that's probably what I'll set my gains to, because that means that the amplifier is going to be expecting 4 volts of signal coming into it. And that's the other way you can do it, but that's obviously dependent on whether or not you know what your head unit does and whether or not the amplifier has it written on it. So these PDX amps, okay, so these PDX amps simply have a min and a max, but what they also have is a nominal. You may be able to notice that on these gains, if I turn them, and I need to lock the focus on this, otherwise it's gonna get tricky. Let's do this. So now, as I turn it, can you hear that? There's a locking point right in the middle there, and that's what Alpine calls nominal. And see the bottom one here, it actually does have some readings. So you've got nominal. That point there is is 0.5 volts. So that would be where you would tune your gain to if you had a really weak aftermarket head unit that put out like 0.5 volts on the pre-outs. Nominal typically is a pretty good place to leave it if you've got a relatively standard but decent head unit. So most standard head units will have a voltage output of around about 2 volts, sometimes 2.5. And then higher end head units have what they call high voltage pre-outs, which are 4 and 5 volts. So knowing that, if nominal is about 2 volts and that's about 0.5 volts, that's about a 1.5 volt difference between each mark. So 2 volts, if I go back to here, will be at 3.5, and if I go back to here, will be at 5. So somewhere in between 3.5, that 5 mark and that 3.5 mark, I want to be. So what I think I'll do is I'm going to set it so that it's exactly horizontal like that, not horizontal, sorry, just halfway between this mark and this mark. If you can see what I'm doing there. So let me just get my eye lined up. So I think around about there is what I'm gonna have it set at, and I'll do the same for the bottom one because they're the same speakers and the same power output and everything. So I'm gonna set that to around about halfway there, and I believe that point there should be around about 4 volts because you've got 2, 3.5, 5. So 4 volts, that'd be about 4.25 volts. Perfect, and I'll do, now for this, that's for the speaker amp, but the subwoofer, as you guys know, I've got it restricted in a small airspace, and I do want to get it a decent sound out of it, so I may be turning the subwoofer gain up a wee bit. Crossover on the subwoofer I have got set to about 120 Hertz. Obviously it is a 12-inch sub, I don't expect it to go that high. That's more there for protection, because what I'm going to do is use the built-in digital crossover on the head unit and low pass it at 80 Hertz at a 12 dB slope. But in the event of the customer going through the settings and accidentally turning the crossover off, I want to have this crossover on here to protect the subwoofer, so at about 120 Hertz. The subsonic filter, I was thinking about it last night. I've got it currently set at 15 Hertz. It can be either off 15 Hertz or 30 Hertz. Thinking about it now, that's such a small box, there's no way it's going to go down to 30 Hertz. So I'm going to flick that across to 30 Hertz for the subsonic filter. Now here, for the filter on the speakers, I will turn them onto high pass mode. Just like that, high pass and high pass, but I'm going to turn the crossover down quite low because I'm again using the built-in crossovers on the head unit. But so these ones here are kind of like fail safes. They're like there to catch it if someone accidentally turns the digital one off. So what I'm going to do is have them set right down. So 30, they can go all the way down to 30. I could just leave them there if I want, and just that way it's like an infrasonic filter for the speakers so that they don't try and produce any sub bass. But realistically, I don't think they're going to go that low. The doors aren't sound deadened, and the rear speakers aren't even in a sealed cavity. So for the rear ones, I'm actually going to set the high pass filter at somewhere between 40 and 60 here, which is, so I want to set that at about 50 Hertz, I think. So that's 40, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, there we go, so that should be 50 Hertz. For the front ones, they are indoors with decent size, so they should be able to go a wee bit lower, so I'm going to have those ones set at 1 click below 40, so that's 40 there, just down a smidge, so that's about 38 Hertz. And again, I know that's really low for the speakers, but these are just there to catch them in the event of the crossovers on the stereo being turned off. The ones on the stereo I am going to set at a higher crossover point. And this switch here is just for the input channels, channel 3 and 4. You can set it up so that if you only have like one set of RCAs coming into this, you can have channels 1 and 2 input go out to 3 and 4, or channels 3 and 4 input go out to 3 and 4, that's the standard way. And then you've got 1+3/2+4 here. So what that does is it sums all 4 channels into the output of channels 3 and 4. I'm not really sure why you would use that setup. Like obviously maybe if you're using a subwoofer bridged across the 2 rear channels or something like that, but we're just using this as a standard 4 channel, so we're keeping the input as channels 3 and 4, that's pretty standard. So that's everything on this set, I believe, except maybe the gain on the subwoofer. I'm going to put the panel back on this one because I think I'm done on this amp here, but I'm not done adjusting the gain on the subwoofer because I may want to turn it up a wee bit. So this simply pushes into that in there and gets squeezed up there to cover the controls, and then this little Allen key screw which goes in here that you tighten up like so. Okay, and then we just give it a bit of a wipe because it's looking a wee bit dirty, and we try and fix this up a wee bit as well. There we go. Okay, so that's that done. So now the next step is to tune the gain on the subwoofer amp, and what I need to do for that is just play a bit of music. What I'll do is so there is a dedicated subwoofer output volume control on the stereo. It goes up to 15, that's what I got it at now. So I'm going to set it down to 10, so 2/3 volume. I'll go to 12. So I'm going to set the subwoofer output at 12, 3/4 volume, I think. 3/5 volume, yeah, at 12. And then I'm going to slowly turn the gain up on the Alpine PDX monoblock amplifier until I'm happy with the bass output coming into the vehicle. So let's close the boot because that is going to make a difference. Still opens like that, yep. Cool, boot closed. Close the front doors, and we're just going to do some listening tests and see if we're happy with the volume of the subwoofer, and then we'll just adjust it up incrementally until we're happy. Well, I should say until I'm happy, because realistically you guys aren't taking part in this tuning. Sorry. Just change into Bluetooth because that radio sound quality is absolute garbage. I wish they would broadcast in higher resolution. Like, there is digital radio or DAB, but we don't really have it here in New Zealand. There's like a couple in the North Island, but none here in the South Island. So it's just better to play music off a device. Now I am going to play something that has a notable bass output. Otherwise it'll be really hard to tune the bass on a, say, a rock song where there's not much. Actually, let's play some Norah Jones, because that actually has decent bass as well.
Come away with me in the night, in fields where the yellow grass.
One knows what it's like
That sounds so
to
good.
be the bad man.
What?
To be the sad man behind blue eyes. The earth is empty as my conscience seems to be. The earth is empty
It's funny, there's a bit of difference between the coaxials and the components. Like that, the components, that's the front components, that's the rear coaxials. I feel like they don't go quite as high on the treble. They're more like rear fill. So that's just the rear speakers. Rear speakers only. And then I can't believe how great that song sounds, and that's an old song, and it probably wasn't ripped at highest resolution. That's off Now 14. Jesus, that's old. That sounds so good though. Oh my god. So good. Okay, so here's what I've done for the settings on the stereo. And I'm still going to do time alignment. I haven't done that yet. So what I actually ended up doing, because I was playing around with it, I had the subwoofer channel turned up to medium and then maximum, listening to the difference. And it still wasn't super bassy, so I started wondering about doing an EQ on it. But then I thought, this lady, she's a bit older, she's not totally tech savvy, so what I've done is I've turned on bass engine, and that's a little gimmicky feature in these Alpines, which is basically like, don't worry about all the settings, we'll do that for you, you just tell us how powerful you want it to sound, sort of deal. So I'll show you, like if I turn this, it goes back to manual, but if I hold this bass button, it goes to bass engine, and then you can click it, and you can go bass level anything from 0 up to 6. And just then I think I had it at 4, so it was sounding really good. And what that does obviously is it controls the subwoofer volume, the bass volume going to this, coming out of the front and rear pre-outs. It just does it all for you, and I think that's going to be good for her. I can tell her, if you want it to sound more powerful and more bassy, just click this button so that it goes orange, and then just turn it up and down. You go from 6 to 0, and then click it again to go back to normal. Or you just leave it. And I think she'll be real happy with that. It just simplifies it for the customer. And if I'm honest, it is sounding better than the way I was how I had it going when I was tuning it with the manual settings in it. So that's good. What else have I done? So we can go in. So now when you click this audio button up here, you actually don't get a subwoofer setting. You just get balance, fader, and defeat. Normally what you would get if you have the thing off, see if I turn bass engine off, it goes to manual set, and then you get subwoofer, bass, treble, balance, fader, and then defeat. Whereas when you have it turned on, as I say, you just get balance, fader, and defeat. I still don't really know what the purpose of defeat is. I don't think anyone uses it. But we can still hold this to go into our manual, into our full sound settings. Audio, bass engine is obviously on. Parameter, initial, 9-band parametric EQ. You'd have to exit bass, it says. So we don't want to do that. Source level, source volume, so we can adjust that to make it sound better. if we want. Whoops, I did the wrong thing there. Audio, source volume, crossover. I'll show you what I've got those set at. Oh, you have to exit the bass. No, we'll just leave that as it is, I think. Subwoofer on, phase, normal or reverse. We'll have it on normal. System, you have to exit the bass. Length, centimeters, time correction, and we can still go and do all this time correction stuff, which is good. So I'll do that next. Power IC, that's the internal amplifier on the stereo. I've got it turned off. That's one thing I love about Alpines, you can turn the built-in amplifier off when you're using a full RCA system, fully amplified. So, and then media expander, I don't use that at all, and you have to exit the bass engine. So the bass engine does take over quite a bit of stuff. Takes over obviously your bass and treble controls, takes over your subwoofer control, takes over the 9-band parametric EQ and the crossovers. But it does it all for you, and you just go up and down depending on how much sort of grunt you want to your sound. And I think that's going to be ideal for this customer, just to make it real simple for her. So that's good. What I've got the gain on the sub-amp tuned to, I've got it set at, see it there, that notch on the right. So it's pointing to 3 o'clock, which is probably around about 75 to 80% gain, because you got to remember it doesn't go a full 360, it goes only to the bottom left and right. It's at about probably 80% gain. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's at 5 out of 6, so that's 15 times 5, about 80, 85, 84%. But it's sounding good and clean, so I'm not worried about it distorting or anything like that. Yeah, I'm happy with it. And to be honest, I don't think she's a huge headbanger. She likes a good, powerful system, but she's not like cranking the volume, rocking down the street, going crazy. I think she just likes her music to sound clear and strong, you know. So what I can do is put this panel back on now. I mean, again, yes, it would be great if I had the DD1, because then I could just tune it with that, but I don't have it. And let's face it, that thing would probably have me tune the volume on it quite low down. Hey, that 4-channel is quite warm compared to the monoblock, just saying. You guys all told me to put the monoblock on top. The 4-channel is quite warm, the monoblock's nice and cold. I wonder if that's... Now, what class are these amplifiers? You can guarantee that the monoblock is a class D, but I don't know what the class of the 4-channel is, because they're PDX, so is that D class 4-channel 4 range? Or has it got some AB in there? Because it's producing quite a bit of heat, and digital amps, D-class amps usually don't produce much heat at all. That's warm, that's cool. Oh wait, no, that could just be because of the fact, yes, no, sorry, I was feeling this panel's been on here a wee bit. I've only just put this panel on, so now it's about to start conducting heat. My bad, because the rest of, yeah, the top of that's nice and warm. Sorry, the camera stopped recording because it reached its maximum one-streak record, I think 30 minutes. Yeah, I was saying it's quite warm up there. But that's all good. And I just noticed there's actually a blue glow up there from the top of that amp. It's quite interesting. I wonder what that would look like at night. But damn, those are looking so good. Okay, just give this a quick dust down. Okay, we're all done. I can close this up. So what I'm gonna do now is see if we get a bass response with the factory subwoofer, this doodacky, out of its hole or sitting in the hole as a passive radiator. And I need to have the boot closed. This is with it out. Definitely sounds better with the factory subwoofer out. Notably better. Not like not a huge amount, but enough to notice it. Like putting this in and out, I was noticing a lot of the high bass cutting in and out, if you know what I mean. Because when you keep it in, obviously all the subsonic rattly stuff still comes straight through the seat and gets you. But when you put this back in, some of that deep audible bass sort of goes away. So yeah, we'll have this out. And then great thing is, oh, that's the bolts. We'll put those there, and this just clips back on. But since we're taking it out, we will take off these speed clips. And then this is now a port through to the boot to allow bass through, and this now just clips back in, just kind of like that. Sort of sits there. There we go, that just sits there, clipped in place. seatbelts back the way I found them when the car came in. She had them crossed like that for some reason, I don't really know why, but she did. So that's good. All vacuumed and tidy. Okay, so the last thing to do for the tuning is the time correction, and I'm 99% sure, if I remember rightly, that the Alpines do it differently to Pioneer. Rather than putting the measurements from you to the speaker, you have to put in the measurements of difference from you to the speaker. So you have to actually tell it how much to correct by, rather than the stereo knowing what to do itself. So what I'm going to do is make a little note on my phone listing the channels, and I will measure the distance between me and each one, and then I will work out what the difference is that I need to account for. Front left, fortunately it's about the same distance from my ear to the tweeter as it is to the woofer. 138-ish, 70, about 110, about 60. Sub, I'm gonna say, here to the center of the grill it's about 130. The subwoofer is probably a wee bit further back than that and down a smidge. So I'm gonna say 150 would probably be about the most shortest route from here to the sub. Okay, now I need to work out what the differences between all these are. So I'm pretty sure this is how you do it for the Alpines, but someone may end up correcting me on this, in which case it'll be too late anyway. But I'm pretty sure this is the right way to do it for Alpines. So my measurements here, from my ears to the speakers, 133, 77.5, 110, 60, 150. The rear right is the closest at 60. So then I take 60 off all the other measurements. I get 73, 17.5, rear left is 50, rear right becomes 0, and subwoofer becomes 90. And then I believe these are the measurements that we put into the Alpine through the Tune It app. Well, we could do it through the Tune It app, or we could just do it straight on the stereo. Might as well just do it straight on the stereo. Alright, let's just do that, because I could use the app, but really not necessary. Okay. And we'll know if it's worked because it will sound good. Setup. Audio, time correction, rear left. Rear left is 50. Now, is this in centimeters or millis? Length, centimeters, inches, centimeters. Okay, we need to go to 50. Closest I can get is 51, that's cool. Front left is 73, 74.8. Front right is 17.5, 17. Rear left, 51, rear right 0, and now I have to do the subwoofers together because this, for some reason, this has subwoofer left and right. I don't know why. I don't think it's necessary. They could have just put subwoofer as in mono, or there'd be a setting in it to make subwoofer mono. But anyway, subwoofer left needs to be 90, woofer right 8. I wonder if this has got that maximum thing in it where it's not going to let me go past a certain amount. That seems to go up really high. Okay. 90, 91.8. Okay, cool, I think that's everything done. That is in centimeters. Okay, cool, let's have a listen. I'm also going to, what color is the backlight on this car? It's like kind of goldy green. Let's just change that real quick. Probably dark green. That looks good. Need to find another sound quality song though.
Come away with me in the night.
Sounds good. I think I do need to turn the front right channel's volume down a wee bit because I just can't hardly hear the left. So I'm just going to go set up audio. Oh, okay. My mistake. I thought this had speaker level adjustment in it, but it doesn't. Interesting. Well then, that actually makes Pioneer better because that's a whole setting that this doesn't have. An important one. Okay, my bad. I thought these Alpines had individual speaker level adjustment like the Pioneers, but doesn't seem to. That's interesting. They must not think it's important because yeah, that front right tweeter being right at the windscreen, right there, that tweeter, that's pointing right at the windscreen and it's just going ba-dunk straight into me and it's really loud. But I mean, I could attenuate it at the crossover, but then I'd have to take all those panels back off. No, I think it's okay. I think she'll be happy. I don't think she, like, you guys know I'm pedantic and like, I don't think she's the kind of audiophile that's going to sit in here and go, that tweeter's too loud, you need to turn it down. I think she's going to be stoked with this system. And it's good, it does sound very nice. So my opinion on the Type X is, I'm sure you're wondering, and I'm just going to compare them to the Focal Flex series because they're the ones that I've always liked the most out of anything that is, you know, of realistic value. So comparing these,
while I'm safe there in your arms. So all I ask is for you.
I would say that they're very, very close. The treble is beautiful and crisp. It's just a wee bit loud, not as loud as the Type R's, but the treble is just a wee bit louder than the Focals. If you guys know me well, you know I like a real subtle, accurate, quiet treble. I like it to sound like a real thing rather than just a speaker going all the time. So that's my only pet peeve. I think the vocals sound very good considering they're coming out of a 6-inch woofer and not a little 80mm 2-inch 3-inch mid-range. I think they sound very good considering that. But comparing them to my Focals, I still prefer my Focals. I just have a different taste of sound, I think, guys. The Alpines, I think the main difference between the Alpines and the Focals, like the Type R's or the Type X's compared to the Flax ones, I think their main bass woofer in the Alpines is much more sensitive and lighter weight. You know, it moves around a lot easier compared to the Focal one, which is quite heavy duty. What that means is that the Focal one kind of has that more lower end quiet bass and relatively good mid bass, whereas these have extremely loud mid bass but also extremely loud mid range. I don't like my mid range to be ultra loud either. And I was saying to Pat, I was saying to Pat before, it's actually interesting thinking about the fact that these woofers don't have a crossover built onto them. That actually makes total sense now thinking about it, because what is the point of a crossover on a speaker? A speaker's just without a crossover, it's just going to play all of its frequencies within its playable range, and it's going to taper off at each end, and you're going to be getting the maximum amount out of your speaker. So it actually makes sense not to have a crossover on it. But I think what makes the difference is the fact that most people like that sound with the loud filter sound, where it's got an increased bass and an increased treble and a slightly lowered mid-range. People like the smiley face EQ curve, and so I think having the crossovers built onto speakers kind of naturally produces that, whereas these mid-range woofers or these mid-bass woofers, they just don't care. They go all out on their mid, all out on their mid-bass, all out on their mid-range, and they play every frequency that they possibly can, so they are quite loud. Personally, I don't like the ultra loud sound, because it sounds more like you're at a concert, you know. I've got a relatively, I would say, decently loud sound system in my car, but these are just brighter. The Alpines, I just think, are a brighter speaker. I don't know. It's really hard to describe. I've got the Rode microphone to try and give you an idea of what they sound like. Obviously, it's not going to be anything like what it actually sounds like in the car. Yeah, I would just say that I think that the Alpines are much brighter than the Focals, and I prefer that more subtle, relaxed, toned down sound of the Focals. So if I had to choose between having a set of Type X 2-way components, a set of Focal 3-way components, I would still choose the Focals. I do prefer the sound of them. These ones retail at I think about $8.99, the front ones, and $6.99 for the back ones. The Focal 3-way components are $7.99 for the front, and the coaxials in the back would be $3.25. So there's a serious price difference between Alpine Type X and Focal Flax. So overall, I'd say they're better for money, and personally, I prefer the sound of them. But anyway, this lady loves Alpine anyway, so I think she'll be stoked. So yeah, there we go, guys. This job is done. It's sounding great and crisp and bassy and powerful and loud and clean. Yeah, as I do at the end of all my videos. Let's do the final rundown of everything I've done to the car. Okay, so Alpine CDE 163 EBT single DIN stereo, CD player, Bluetooth, USB auxiliary radio, does have Pandora but we don't use it in New Zealand and unfortunately you can't turn it off. 4-volt pre-outs, 28-bit DAC, time alignment, all of that good stuff. Sounding really good. Hooked up to the steering wheel controls, which are working. You've got volume, source, volume up, and seek up, like next track, or if you hold it on while you're on radio, it goes through the presets. The phone side of things isn't working, unfortunately, because these were dual function buttons with the factory system, but they're only single function with this stereo. So that's the front end. RCA is going from the stereo to the amps in the back. We've got, actually, the RCA is going from the front to the back for the speaker amplifier are these Monster Interlink 201 XLN, two channel sets, 5 meters. The subwoofer amplifier has a set of Rockford Fosgate RFIT20 RCAs going to it. So also a good set, not as good as Monster, but good enough for the subwoofer. In the front, got Alpine Type X components, the XS65C, and in the back the XS65. Woofer is in behind here. Tweeter is not behind here. That's where the factory tweeter is, and it's tiny. Disconnected though. The Alpine Type X tweeter is up there. Kind of see it through there. Kind of. So that's the front ones. The rear ones, the grills are behind. They are behind this grill here. Very stealthy and clever. Factory subwoofer from the parcel tray has been removed. By the way, that sticker was already there. These Jaguars came out with a factory full Alpine system. 3-way components in the back, coaxials in the rear, subwoofer, and a fully active amplifier. What is it? It would have been a 6.1 channel active amplifier, because the factory tweeters and mid-range were on the same channel, but the tweeter had a cap on it. The front woofers had their own channel, the rear speakers had their own channel, and the subwoofer had its own 2 channels because it was a dual voice coil. And I think that's everything in the cabin of the car. Haven't done any sound deadening or extra wire running. All I had to do to run back to the rear was run those RCAs, which are run down the center here on the right hand side. They go under the rear seat there, underneath, up to the factory loom, and through the rear firewall. And that is everything in the back, in the car. So if I pop the trunk, over this side, we've got 2 PDX amplifiers. These are her amplifiers that she supplied, along with those Monster RCAs. So we've got a PDX 4.100 4-channel on the bottom, and a PDX 1.600 monoblock on the top, powering the subwoofer, which is this Pioneer IB flat 12-inch subwoofer, slimline. It's the TS SW301S2, which is 400 watts RMS, 1500 watts max, 2 ohm voice coil. So that's pretty much perfect for the PDX amp, because the PDX amplifier does 600 watts at 2 ohms, so it's very well matched. And obviously that's in a custom enclosure that I built, which you guys have seen. The fuse for these, you just lift up this panel here. This comes out like here to expose her battery, her factory fuse box, and then that T-spec fuse holder there has a 150 amp fuse in it, supplying both of the amplifiers. And then this just obviously goes back in like that. This still comes in and out nice and easy if she wants to get to her spare wheel. It's just a bit hard to put it back in one-handed. There we go. Yeah, and that's that. Oh, I also got her electric aerial working, because when it came in, whoever installed the previous stereo didn't know where to find the remote turn on for the aerial, but I found it, got it working, so that's good. Full reception, hopefully. And the only other thing that I really did that I thought was good and worth mentioning was I also, in the same loom where I got the steering wheel control wire and the aerial wire, I found a dimmer trigger for the car. So when you turn the lights on, and this looks better if the ignition is on. So obviously when you turn the lights on, it dims, and these light up, although it's hard to see. And there is this adjustable dimmer here, which determines how bright they go. And what's great is the dimmer on the stereo, as you can see, is working. And that works no matter how bright I have this turned. So if I turn the dimmer on, that's it dimmed. And now you can see those heater controls lighting up brighter, kind of. Well, actually, if I go over here, it doesn't affect the stereo at all, which is good, because some stereos don't like that. So if I have it at minimum, it still works. If I have it at maximum, it still works. So that's good. And yeah, I believe that is everything. Get this out of here. How's the battery doing? It's pulling about 6 amps. We'll leave it on for a bit longer. Alright guys, say goodbye to the nice clean and empty trunk or boot, because I have to put all her stuff in there. So this is the last time it's going to look all pretty like this. Okay, there we go, I got all her stuff in the back there. And that's actually semi-wedged there as well with that box, so they're not going to move around, they're going to stay there. It's got obviously her original stereo, speakers, factory subwoofer, and the other TV tuner and Japanese stuff that I took out as well. And I also found this was meant to go there, it was just in her back seat, so I put that there. And then all of her other stuff that I had found lying around the car, I just put in an Alpine box there. It's just nicer to give it back to them, like give their mess back to them in a tidied format, and then if they want they can spread it out once they've taken it away, rather than me just chucking it all in the back seat, you know. So yeah, this car is done, guys. It's been really fun, and I'm amazed how easy it was compared to what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be an absolute mission. Most of the time Jaguars give us a real hard time, but no, it worked out really, really well. Sounds great. I think she's going to be stoked. I think this is also probably going to be the last video that I do here at Auto Sound and Security, by the way, because the next 2 weeks I am working here in the next 2 weeks, basically doing small jobs here and there, anything we can fit in, but also starting to clear some stuff out, get it moved on to new owners or anything like that. And also, if you guys are in the Christchurch area, in the Canterbury area, Auto Sound and Security where I work, we're going to be having a big garage sale clear out of on Saturday the 10th of March, I believe. Pretty much anything in this building is going to be up for sale, almost anything. Tools, shelves, parts, wiring, anything you want, you can come in and we'll try and sell it to you. And also, I believe the next 2 weeks we're going to be having, is it from next week onwards, the big sale? Yeah, and so the next 2 weeks we're going to be having a huge sale on all car audio gear, up to 50% off pretty much anything we can sell. So yeah, if you're in the Canterbury area, come by. We're at 37 Gasson Street, right next to Black's Fasteners, which has the great big car park. And I imagine Yagi will be out in the street. We'll probably have Yagi, our giraffe, out in the street, so look out for that. And yeah, come by, buy something. Handed over the keys for the car to the customer, showed her how everything worked. We sat in the car, had a listen, played some different songs. She was absolutely stoked. She loved it. She loved how loud it went. She's looking forward to having some parties in there. So great job, went well, customer's happy. Thank you guys for watching today's video. Choose to be happy, and I will catch you in my next video. Kite Ano.